Bill Ham, welcome to the Financial Freedom Fast podcast. What is going on, brother?
Not much, man. Hey, appreciate you having me on. How you been?
Doing well, doing well. Bill's the author of a book. This is how we first got connected, called Creative Cash. The thing that really pulled me into his book is he bought his first 400 units without ever taking a step into a bank. These are through master lease options, seller financing. And then outside of that, Bill has moved on to some larger syndication style properties. Bill, why don't you give us an overview let's start from where you're at now and then back it up to how it all started.
Currently, I'm semi-retired. I jokingly say retired. I'm 46. I'm not retired, but I have sold everything. So I have exited my entire portfolio. I had over 1,000 units, have sold everything, timed the market. It's like I keep making the joke, who has two thumbs and timed the market? Like this guy, I exited at the top. I've been doing this for 18 years. I know market cycles. I know when to hold them, when to fold them. I know how to predict it. And we sold, exited the entire portfolio. And that's where I'm at today. So living large, everything's great. Getting ready to get back into the market, looking forward. A lot, I'm sure, what we'll talk about today. Creative financing, why I wrote the book. I think we've got a very interesting market coming. Yep, that's where I've been. So sold everything and then working backwards. Like I said, I've been doing this about 18 years. I started off in 2005. Didn't know my head from a hole in the ground, then went into the '08 recession. Thought I was a genius, buying a bunch of older real estate houses, stuff like that. Flipped a bunch, held a bunch, lost a bunch. My recession hit about 2011, 2012. And I had some failures in there and recovered and kept going. And yeah, like you said, I built my first portfolio with only creative financing. That was seller financing, lease options, things like that. And then ultimately started going into syndication as the market shifted, as a lot of those creative financing techniques don't always survive and don't always work until that market cycle comes back again, which is where we're headed. But yeah, as the world got better through 2012 on up through last week, then I was building that portfolio that I wound up selling here recently. Got into syndication, as you pointed out, larger apartment complexes. And yeah, that's where I'm at.
You even go through it in your book. The market cycles, they're not 100% predictable to the day and time, but they are largely anticipatory. You can see what could be coming. So you speak a little bit about where you see the market going. What do you see for the market cycle over the next 2 years? Why are you gearing up right now to get ready to buy?
Because I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity here in the near future. And you nailed it there. You can't predict the height or the bottom of a cycle, right? You can't say it's going to go this high or it's going to go this low or it's going to occur exactly right now. You're right. Those are not things we can predict. But the market cycles they just exist. I always kind of tell people, it's kind of like, if you don't believe in that, it's like arguing with gravity, right? You can go jump off a building and say you don't believe in gravity all you well like. It isn't going to matter. It doesn't need you to believe in it, right? Market cycles exist, period. That's just the physics of real estate. Now, when, where, how high, how low, yeah, we can sit around and debate that stuff. But yeah, you learn to watch the world. And what I've come to realize over almost 20 years is that really what we're talking about is an inflation cycle. You have to watch the amount of money available in the world, and you have to understand how the Federal Reserve will respond to that, right? So it's all about inflation. So we saw inflation rising nicely, gently, normally over the last 10 years, and then all of a sudden COVID hit. And we saw hyperinflation because arguably the feds chose the wrong path. I'll say that we won't have to go down any political road here. Right. Clearly, the Federal Reserve put, whatever your opinion is, a whole lot of money into the world, right or wrong. And that caused inflation. And now the feds self-admittedly are catching up and trying to react to this tremendous amount of inflation that has occurred, not completely by the amount of money. We also know there's other things in the world like war and supply chain, COVID, things outside of our control. But you have to watch those patterns. So when you see inflation, you have to know that the Federal Reserve will raise the rates shortly after that. And that always triggers a downturn in the real estate market. Simply because rates go up, money gets more expensive and deals don't work out as well financially. Right. So when that occurs, you have a downshift in the market. We go into what is the 4 business cycles, the expansion, the peak, the recession, and the trough. So we talk about the recession cycle, a down cycle. Doesn't mean recession as in like the GDP definition of recession. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying a recession cycle. And that down cycle is because the feds have raised the rates. And that's where creative financing comes in. And that's why I wrote that book about 2 years ago. It was a little bit early. I thought we would be in this market within a year or so from the time I wrote the book 2 years ago. But COVID hyper kicked that market, hyperinflated it, gave us a little bounce there. And
Right.
so that's why we went a little long on that market cycle. But yeah, going forward, I think we're going to see some distress. I really
Mm.
do. And I think it's going to be good and bad. I think it's going to create a lot of opportunity for people that are in a good position to buy. And I think it may be disruptive for people that have bought wrong and maybe financed wrong. But that's how the cookie crumbles. Yeah.
Bill said he did not want to say it publicly, so he didn't want to scare anyone. So I'll say it. Over the past 2, 3 years or so, people have been getting into some deals, and I did it the same way too, through hard money loans, high interest rate loans that come due in, call it 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever your term may be. And when you're buying at such a high inflated market, and then we have this interest rates are rising. If you have a variable rate at the end of the year, you're gonna get hit with that. But loans are coming due, right? If people bought 3 years ago and they have a 4 year loan, they have 1 year left on this loan, then at that point, they need to figure out either how to exit that asset or how to refinance and pull and be able to pay that loan off. And what we were discussing is that we think that there could be some problems with the way that people have financed deals, getting in so aggressively. Like we were talking about, a lot of real estate investors, and honestly, myself included, because I didn't start investing until 2021. You look like a pro because the market did its own thing. When you're playing with the market and the market is playing right along with you and going up and up, you can look very good and psychologically think you know what you're doing. But then, when times get a little worse, that's where I guess the true investors and the guys who know what they're doing will come out here. And that is a lot of understanding market cycles.
Absolutely.
So, how can, with the prediction of downturn in the market here, again, nobody can fully predict anything, how can one get ready to take advantage of a market like this?
Yeah, absolutely. What I think the market is going to do is just go back to being normal.
Mm.
Honestly speaking, I think these very low interest rates in the market that we have had for the last 3 or 4 years has been the abnormal market. I was talking to a group the other day and I said, my average rate throughout my career is 6%. On average, this 3%, 4%, 0% kind of loans are the abnormal market. So I think we're going to go back to settling around 6% or so as far as rates are concerned. The question is, when do they come back down? How high do they stay up where they are? How high do they go? How long do they stay there? But I think we will settle back around 6% ish. So my advice going forward is those who already own assets, like yourself, if you're looking at a refi or a sale, you need to start looking at that future number for your exit and planning your exit right
Mm.
now. If you've got short-term loans, maybe you do have these adjustable rate mortgages or something coming due, don't wait. Start figuring that out right now. You might not like the optics. You might not like the math that you're getting. Don't stick your head in the sand and hope the problem just goes away. You need to go ahead and proactively figure out an exit, especially if your debt service coverage ratio is low. That's
Mm.
important. You need to figure that out on your own. For people that already own, for people that don't already own or looking to get in, I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of opportunity coming. I think what you're looking at is distress, as we were talking about, from maturity exposure. People that went out and got these loans 2, 3 years ago that were 2, 3 year short term interest only adjustable rate type
Mm.
loans, as those loans mature or come due, they're not going to have the equity and they're not going to have the debt service ratio on a lot of those properties to be able to exit the refinance or something of that nature. You
Right.
can always refinance. The question is, are you cashing out or cashing in? And I think a lot of people planned on the Burr model: buy, renovate, refinance, run away, whatever it is. And
Right.
so they wanted to go out there and buy this asset and go to the bank and cash all of their money out in a year or two later. That's a great model and it works great as long as the market is with you, as you pointed out in the beginning. If the rates jump up and the market shifts, that model falls apart instantly. And
Mm.
that's where we're at today. So if you walk into a bank and say, hey, I would like to cash all my money out of a deal in a refinance, I'm not saying that's impossible. I'm saying it's improbable. Banks are not super thrilled with that kind of financing at the moment. So you might have a loan coming due, and now you're looking at a refinance. but you might be having a capital call. You might be having to put in your own money or call up investors and say, hey, sorry, we're not cashing out. As a matter of fact, I need some more money from you or we're going to lose the whole property. I think
Mm.
that's a conversation that a lot of owners and operators are going to have going forward. And in there will lie the opportunity for people to use creativity or just flat cash to come in and solve some of those buying mistakes that other people have made. So that's where I think we're going to see a lot of opportunity. You're going to want to learn to be a problem solver going forward. That's where the money's going to be made.
And we will definitely dig into that in a little bit because you wrote a book on how to solve some of these problems. But one thing that I did want to touch on is the BRRRR model, right? So you buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and repeat, or
Repeat.
run away, either
Whatever it
or,
was,
right?
I always forget. Yeah, repeat.
So the whole idea is that you increase the value of this property or the market goes up. That's what's been happening a lot lately. Market goes up, your property is worth more. So now you can refinance this property. Let's say the bank will give you 75%. If the value that you have into that property, the loan that you have on that property is less than 75% of the current value of that property, you're going to be able to pull some cash out of that deal. Now, a lot of people say that they like the BRRRR model because it's nice and safe and it's like a buy and hold method. But the same people will say that they don't like flipping because they think that flipping is risky and doing that type of work. But if you think about it, from a market cycle standpoint, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but it's the same exact thing. You're hoping and mathematical probabilities and analysis to see what that property is going to value at later. You do all that work, but it's the same thing. If the market crashes, you're not selling your flip and making money. And if you do try and do this BRRRR model, if the value of your property drops, you're not getting the value out of that property. It's the
Yeah,
same type
absolutely.
of thing.
That's a great way of putting it. The fix and renovate and refinance model is analogous to gambling. It is. And so the only thing that I would add in there is it's really about the time from the buy to the refinance. If you have a short hold cycle, 1 year, 2 year before this exit, this refi, whatever, then you're extremely sensitive to the price and the terms and the market. If you say, hey, I'm going to buy, renovate, and refinance 10 years from now, man, you're golden. Who cares? You're great. It
Right.
doesn't matter. You got time. The property will go up in value. No problem. If you're going to buy or renovate and refi in 18 months, okay, now you are hypersensitive to the price, to the exit, to the interest rates, to your own income and debt ratio. And it is in there that I think people got a little over the tips of their ski in some of their buying and using lenient, high interest rate, short term loans to justify the price. That's where I think we're going to see some mistakes. People that used interest only in the wrong manner. They used interest only to justify overpaying for the asset in the first place. That's going to be a problem. And that's where I think that you're going to have some people that have loans come due that are going to be difficult to service. And that will be where you can use creative financing to come in and solve some of those problems.
That is a perfect transition to the second half of this podcast here. So, I've on this podcast, you're an expert, man. You wrote the book on creative cash, creative financing, and you built up such a strong portfolio so quickly using a lot of these methods that you talk about. Two of them, the main ones, lease options, or if you're doing multifamily, master lease options, rent to own type of deal, and then seller financing. Can you give us a brief description? Tell us like we're 5-year-olds. Let's start with master lease options or lease options. What is that?
Very similar to the same thing, lease option, match lease option. So, one, a lease option means you are leasing a property, you're renting the property with the right to buy it someday in the future. A master lease option is the exact same thing with just multiple units. So we
Mhm.
only use that term master to mean we're doing it over more than one unit. So if it's a
Mm.
house, it's a lease option. If it's apartments, it's a master lease option. Same thing. So either way, we're coming in and agreeing with the seller. So it's easier to explain like a role play. So Matt, you've got a property, you want to sell it $1 million. I come in and say, yeah, but Matt, the property's only worth 800,000. You say, yeah, but I need $1 million. And I say, okay, but it might be worth $1 million if I could do these things to it or fix it up, or it might be worth $1 million. It might be worth $2 million in 2 or 3 or 5 years. It's just not worth that today. So how do we solve that today problem? And that's kind of
Mhm.
what that's for. Okay, I tell you what, you're going to rent the property to me. So you and I are going to agree on a price. Okay,
Mhm.
$1 million. We agree. Now I'm going to rent the property from you for a certain amount of time. We would agree on a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever. And so I'm going to rent the property with the right to buy it in that same amount of time. So now we've
Mhm.
decided that I'm going to buy this property from you sometime between tomorrow and 3 years from now for $1 million.
Mhm.
Okay. Why would I want to do that? Why would you want to do that? I do it because it gives me the ability to come in and maybe do the value add that
Mhm.
you couldn't or didn't or couldn't afford to do. Maybe you ran out of money and you're stuck in this situation. The property needs just a little bit more cash or effort, and we can make this thing really nice. If I could just borrow it, I could do these things. Yeah, that's what a lease option's for. So you're looking for people that are burned out landlords, maybe don't have enough money to continue a repair project, things like that. You're going to rent the property and then have a right to buy it at the price
Mhm.
that you agree on today. So I do it because I'm hopefully going to be able to bring the property value up to, let's say, $2 million, and now I have the option to buy it at 1 million. You would do it because you are a burned out landlord. You're tired of dealing with the property. Maybe you don't want to take a tax hit on the sale, things of that nature. So it's usually a distressed landlord that for some other reason, I can't go in, get a traditional loan, put down 20% and buy the property. Repairs need to be done. The numbers are bad, whatever the case, right? That's what a lease option is for. You're going to rent the property to me. I'm going to do whatever it was you couldn't do. We agree on a price and a time frame, and then I buy it someday in the future. That's a 10,000 foot view. That's what a lease option is, or master lease option.
What is an example that you've been through a real life master lease option?
Yeah.
And let's hear how that went, how you got it.
Um, yeah, smallest one I ever did was on duplex. I actually gave a lease option to a church, really bad abandoned piece of real estate, and they wanted to use it for a battered women's shelter and for
Mhm.
housing for women that they took care of in the community. And it was more or less abandoned to me. And so I gave it to them and said, okay, as long as you make it livable and you fix it up, you can use it for whatever you want. So it was a tax write off to me. It was sitting abandoned anyway. So that's one that I gave in that reason and in that scenario. Another one, the biggest one I ever received was 108 unit master lease
Mm.
option. And that's the biggest one I ever did as the buyer or optionee. Yep. And ran that one for 3 years, straightened out the operations, got the property up and running, and then walked away from it. Chose not to exercise the option to purchase.
Mm.
But I got the property operationally up to where the seller was able to turn around and sell it for the price that they wanted. Turned out good, win win. I chose not to buy it. But the seller was able to immediately sell it after my effort. So it was a great learning experience for me. 3 years worth of business practice. Like I always say, hey, you can't learn to ride a bike without a bike. So that was just a bike for me to learn to pedal and made a lot of cash flow and didn't buy it. So it turned out real well.
And that just from the name of this strategy, lease option, master lease option, you've got the first part, which is the lease, which is an agreement to basically rent the property. And then on the back end, you've got this option that says
Right.
you have the option to buy that property and at the purchase price that you set your amount on. Now,
Yes.
when you're executing these deals, are you typically bringing a down payment to the table? Is it really all up to negotiation? What do you typically say?
Yeah, probably yes to both of those answers. So it is always up to negotiation, first comment, but you will actually several comments, but you do have to have what is considered legal consideration. So in most states, legal consideration is $10 or more, meaning there has to be a monetary exchange of $10 or more to make the
Mm.
contract valid. All right, an earnest deposit, something of that nature. So in most states, it's $10. Okay, so what you're asking about is option money, or basically
Mhm.
option money, which serves as earnest money deposit, right? Just like if we were going out and buying a property and we put it under contract, which by the way, a master lease option is functionally a very long purchase and sale. It's really what it is, except you're just getting the right to go over there and borrow the property during this very long purchase and sale agreement. That's
Mm.
really what it is you're agreeing that we're going to sell this property at a price someday. Well, instead of 30 days or 60 days, it's 3 years, but it's still a purchase and sale agreement, more or
Mhm.
less. And now I lost the train of thought. What was the question? All right, so we're going into the lease option. The master lease gives us the right to control it. Sale. I lost my train of thought. What was your other question? Option money. That's what we're talking about. I lost train of thought.
Right,
Option money. Right. Yeah.
right.
So that was it there. The deposit money, putting the deposit money down, option money, which by the way is added to the purchase price if you close. and forfeit it if you don't close, and close as an exercise your option. So yeah, that is the money
Right.
that you have to put down. Again, can be as little as $10. Probably not going to be $10, but it is a negotiated amount.
And when should our listeners even consider using a strategy like this?
When a property will not qualify for traditional financing. So I am of the belief that if you can go to the bank, borrow, let's say a reasonable amount, 75, 80%, that's what I consider reasonable. 40, 50% is not reasonable. 50,
Mm.
60% down payment, not reasonable. So I'm saying when you cannot go to the bank and put down 20, 25% at today's interest rates, and that deal makes sense, that's when you use these techniques. So if you can go to the bank, if you can put down 20, 25% and at 7, 8%, whatever the rates are today, and that deal makes sense, you should do that. Buy it, be done with it, and close. If you can't, instead of throwing the deal in the trash and saying, well, gosh, but what a piece of junk deal, and that seller's crazy, I'm saying, hold on, bring the deal back out of the trash. Now let's apply some creative concepts to the deal and see if there's something we can make work here. So creative financing is not a one-stop shop. I'm not telling you should, hey, go out and only do lease options or only go out and do seller financing. No, you got to go out and just look at deals the way you look at all deals all the time. And when
Mm.
one doesn't work for the traditional purchasing method, okay, now let's add creative financing to it. So creative financing is a probability increase. That's all it is. Like we're
Mm.
using these techniques to make the range of good deals just a little bit bigger. That's it.
Right.
And if you try and live in this world of only creative financing, you're actually going to miss a lot of other deals. So I don't want people to get too hooked on the subject of creative financing to where that's all you think there is, and that's all I'm trying to do. It's a
Mm.
mistake. And I know there's people out there that teach only this. That's also a mistake. You need to teach people how to find deals the normal way and then
Right.
use these kind of techniques when applicable, when they solve problems.
The real reason we're digging into it now is we see this as a skill that if you can grow this over the next 6 months to a year and really focus in on it, you will be able to take advantage of some properties that are hitting the market and use some of these strategies here to be successful in the
Absolutely.
upcoming years. Let's talk about seller financing. Tell me like I'm a 5-year-old. What is it?
All right. That's an easy one. That's actually a lot more simple concept than a lease option. Even seller financing is exactly what it sounds like. The seller is going to finance the deal. So the seller, first of all, has to have 100% equity. Truly seller finance. Now, there's some workarounds. People call them wraps and subject
Mm-hmm.
to financing, but that is not seller financing. Seller financing is where the seller transfers title to you. You have a closing, you buy the property, but the seller is the one acting as the bank. So instead
Right.
of the bank stepping in and giving you the funds to give to the seller to pay the seller off, and now you have a loan at the bank, you're not paying the seller off. You now have a loan with the seller. Perhaps the seller wants some down payment, certainly negotiable. But point being is the seller has 100% equity and is capable of financing that property to you. That is seller financing with an actual transfer of the title. So it's going to be recorded in your name, your entity, whatever the case, just like a bank. If you don't pay, the seller's remedy is to foreclose,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that is different than a master lease option. As a master lease option or lease option, you're only a renter. You're not the owner. The title does not transfer to you as you don't get a warranty deed in a lease option like you would with seller finance. Title transfers. So that's a big difference there. I think that that seller financing, if you're capable, if the seller is capable, is the best way to go. That it is a more stable structure legally and otherwise than a lease option. But if a seller does not have 100% equity, you do the lease option. If they have equity, then you do seller financing.
Let's say you're in a lot of positions of our listeners here. You're 25 years old. You don't even let's say you have one duplex. You own a duplex, but you see this huge opportunity coming in the market. You want to get a deal like this done. How can you go about searching for these deals, and what are the conversations and structures to build a relationship to be able to execute on one of these
Sure.
creative financing
That's a
deals?
simple answer. Again, you don't go find these deals, you find
Mm.
deals. So
Mm.
there are only two ways to find deals. Either you're going directly to an owner or you're working with a realtor. It's one of the two. I'm talking directly to the owner, or you've got an agent and I'm talking to your agent. One of the
Right.
two. So we have to continue to find deals in whatever manner you are already finding those deals. So if you have some kind of a direct contact campaign, which I strongly recommend, for under about 40 units. I teach all my students, if you're 30, 40 units and smaller, try and go directly to the owner. Just don't even worry about realtors. Just try and set up some kind of direct contact system to the owner. All right. If you're about 40, 50 units and above, you're pretty much in the commercial realtor space there. You don't typically get a 200 unit complex off of Craigslist or a FSBO sign out by the road on this 200 unit complex. That's not how that happens. You know what I mean? You can send these owners of 200 unit complexes a little yellow, we buy apartments postcard. Maybe they'll call you. Unlikely, right? It's got a line in the sand around 50 units and above. It's pretty much commercial realtor world there. So the answer there is you've got to go out and establish relationships with commercial realtors, get to know them, look at these deals, figure out when a deal doesn't work for traditional financing, explain that scenario to the realtor, then explain how your offer, lease option, seller financing, whatever, solves that seller's problem. And most importantly, how that realtor is going to get paid. That's your number one obstacle right there when working with a realtor is, are they getting their commission? And the answer had better be yes, they are. But that's what you got to figure out in creative financing. Again, directly to an owner, I would also look to make a cash offer, a low cash offer that would allow me to go to a bank or a hard money lender or someone, like you've done a lot of hard money lending. You're clearly buying right if those people are financing your deals, because they're usually pretty aggressive with those loans, and the hard money lenders don't like to overfund deals, right? So that's where I would say use that kind of financing there, make a cash offer, make it low as heck. And if the seller says no, then fall back to your next offer in line. Here's a tip and a mistake most people make. They go in and they sit down and they want to put all their offers on the table. I'm going to make you 3 offers. Here's a cash offer, a creative financing offer, and a bank offer here. Choose one. You choose one. That is a bad idea. I'm telling you, don't do that. You're going to give, for a number of reasons, you're going to give your seller decision fatigue. Number one, they don't know what to choose, which one to do. Number two, if they're a smart seller, they're going to say no to all 3 just to see what you'll say. But if I just say no, all 3, you got to do better. Now what? You've played all your cards. You have nothing else. And so that's why I'm telling you, come in with the first offer being the best offer for you, which would be a low cash offer. If you're buying stuff at the right price, believe me, there'll be money there for it. Make a low cash offer. They say no, then fall back to plan B. That's a lease option or seller financing, whatever the case. I would go in that route and never make multiple offers at once. That's just bad negotiation, period. Doesn't have anything to do with real estate, really.
And how do you know whether to make and I mean, it is all situational, right? But how do you know if a seller's got 100% equity sitting in a property
You'd
to
have to
make?
ask them. You'd have to ask them. You
Yeah.
would. You'd have to say, okay, listen, we can discuss 2 different. So first off, you have already identified the seller's interest in selling, and you've already identified their issue, their problem, whatever the case. Now you've gone back to the seller and said, okay, I appreciate you want to sell your property. I looked at your numbers. Fill in the blank. They suck. The property's got deferred maintenance, whatever the case. You always want to blame it on the bank. I'm with you, man. I think that property's definitely worth $1 million. But you know what? That evil bank over there says, I got to be at a 1.25 debt service ratio. What do I do? So you can always blow it off on the bank, right? The bank's the evil one here. All right. So now what I'm doing is I'm positioning myself with you on this side of the problem. See, it's you and I on this side and the bank over there. So how do you and I solve our problem when the bank isn't involved? It's something like that. And then I'm figuring out what your issue is, what your needs are. And that's the killer right there. It's not my needs, it's your needs. What do you need? And then I'm going to craft the offer that would solve that. So in there, I would probably be coming back to you before making the offer saying, okay, listen, there's a couple things we can do here. There's seller financing, there's master lease options. Let me explain a little bit. That's where I might educate them a little bit and say, listen, if you have 100% equity, we can do seller financing right there. They would probably tell you, well, I got a loan or I don't have a loan. Okay, you have a loan. Then let's talk about this scenario. You just go that route. It's easy to ask them at some point in time. You don't have to ask them what the loan balance is. Just say, hey, do you have a mortgage on the property? People tell you, like, yeah, I got a mortgage. Okay, seller financing. Unless your down payment will clear whatever loan they have. That's rare, but I have done it once. On a 152 unit property, I got seller financing that actually had a mortgage, but they wanted me to put down 20%. And my 20% down payment actually cleared their primary loan. So they used my down payment to get rid of their original mortgage. They carried back the rest for about 3 years, and then we refinanced from there. So there are ways to do it, but yeah, that's it.
So it seems like a big part of getting these offers either accepted or even having a chance to make these offers is, I think it's 2 things, is fact finding out what you need to know about the property and the equity position and what needs to be done and all this different work to craft your offer, but then also building the trust with that owner that you're actually going to be able to do all this stuff. What are some ways that you've built trust, built that?
That is a tough one. That's a difficult one to deal with. One, a resume. If you've been in the business, if you have a resume, that should speak for itself. If you are new to the business, that's going to be a question that somebody's going to ask. Why you? Why should I go with you? You don't have any experience. You may want to look to bring on a partner that has a resume that's got some experience, someone like myself or you that could come in and help someone with that deal. That would be the next one. And the third answer is you might not be able to overcome the objection. You just might have to tell them, hey, they're going to have to just take a shot. If they have a better offer, take it. If they've got a better scenario, go for it. If they don't, give you a shot. That's sometimes all you can do is just admit that you're new and get to work and see if people will give you a shot. Somebody eventually will give you a shot.
Yeah. And realistically, I'm not saying anyone should do this, but you could go to every single property that's on the market, look at the value, like, go on Zillow, even if you're trying to do this with a duplex or a triplex, look at every single property and find out what the actual value of it is right now. Make a stupid low, especially if it's been sitting on the market for 30 or more days. Make that stupid low offer that you were talking about, wait for them to come back to you, and then say, okay, if I can't do this, then how much equity do you have in the property? Are we able to do something creative on that side? I only have about 50% equity. Oh, I have this strategy master lease option.
Right.
And if you have that partner, you can fall back and say, my partner has done plenty of these deals and it works out fantastic for the seller, for the buyer. You get tax benefits from working with us. You're not paying that full tax amount off the break. We get to fix your property up, and you can watch over us while we're doing that.
There you go. You got it. That's exactly how you do it.
That's yeah. It's taught from you. So I
I was going to say,
still
sounds like you might have read my book or something. I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah, which I do go through that step by step in the book.
Good step-by-step processes in there, and that's what a lot of people are looking for. They want to know, what is the next thing that I should do to get on my path to start get my first real estate deal, get my first creative financing deal. Bill said we shouldn't only be looking for creative financing. We should look for just good deals and see how we can make something into a good deal.
Absolutely. I know you didn't exactly ask that question, but I can answer that question for anybody listening. It's like, what do I need to do? What's the next step? How do I get started? Look, you can break the real estate business down into three simple concepts. You only have to do these three simple things: deal flow, deal analysis, networking. That's it. Deal flow. You got to start bringing deals in the door. Don't care. Don't worry, they're big, small, short, or tall. Who cares? Just get deals coming in the door. Anything, everything. Deal analysis. You've got to learn what you're looking at. You got to know the value. You got to know how to analyze them. You got to have something to analyze. You can't analyze something that hadn't come in. So it's deal flow first, deal analysis second. Get good at understanding what you're looking at. And then third, you need the network to help you in the relationships to build the business for the money and to take it down. And so that's what I said. If you're looking to get started, super simple. Deal flow, deal analysis, and get out there and get to know people. That's it. Now, what kind of deal flow? Again, I wouldn't even think that hard. I would just get started. 2 units, 10 units,
Right.
100 units, whatever. Go on LoopNet, go on Craigslist, go everywhere. Just get started. Just start looking at deals.
Start making some action on your side to bring in some of this stuff. And you jumped the gun. That was literally my next question, is what is one actionable step that our listeners can take to get them closer to this and get closer to financial freedom? I love that. Deal flow, deal analysis, and networking. So deal flow, you can, like you said, go on Zillow, work on, just Google, how to find off-market properties,
Yeah,
or
realtors, direct to owners,
right,
Zillow, anything, whatever. Just do it.
right,
And then read a book, read something, or work with a coach or somebody and learn how to evaluate those properties.
right.
That's key, because it's competency. And this is not mine. This is something from wholesale, but it's competency times frequency equals revenue, right? You got to know what you're doing. You got to go out and do it a lot of times, and that makes money. So I would say deal flow times deal analysis equals cash flow, right? So you want cash flow, you got to be bringing deals in the door, and you got to know what you're looking at. So deal flow times deal analysis equals cash flow. That would be my personal formula. So just get started looking at stuff. Don't overthink the situation. Everybody looks for some magic answer. Just
Right.
Pick up
And
the phone, call a
if
realtor,
if
anything.
you are just starting off, if you have one property, you're in a better situation. But just know that if you can find a amazing deal, the money will come. You can find somebody to put down money to buy an awesome deal. Maybe you don't have the experience, but you can also bring in someone who can talk on it and has the experience to get it
If
done.
you have the relationship.
If you have the network,
Deal flow, deal
deal
analysis,
analysis,
network.
network,
Exactly. So
love
you're
it.
absolutely right. The first two will find you the deal. Absolutely. But
Right,
without the network, it's a mistake to think because you've identified a good deal that magically money shows up. It will not. You've got to have that last piece of the relationship. If you have the relationship, then yes, that comment is absolutely true. Go crazy and find good deals, and you'll have the people to back them up. But
right.
that's those three pieces. And if you don't have any one of those three pieces, the other two won't, unless you're rich or you won the lottery. Okay, then you can skip the networking thing. But outside of that, for the rest of us mortals,
Right,
you're after
right.
those things.
You win the lottery, you wanna build some cash flow, just buy
Call
a
me.
bunch of multifamily and yeah, yeah,
Call me. I'll give you my
call
number.
call up Bill. He'll put you into
We'll spend it
some
for
big
you.
real
No,
estate.
call me. But yeah,
Bill, next
yes.
question here coming up. Actually, our last question.
All right.
What is one question or topic that you wish I would have asked or covered? And how would you have answered or how would you have responded and expanded
That's a
upon
good
that
one. I've never
topic?
actually been asked that question before. I've done probably 50 podcasts. That's the first time anybody's ever asked me that. So I will say that one because that's a really good question. Hey, what did I not think of? What's something really smart that I didn't think to ask you that you're
Right.
that's a good one. I want to remember that one. Yeah, gosh, what did we not cover? I would probably say mindset is the biggest thing,
Mm,
really. And we did actually cover that, but I see the point of what you're asking here. Yeah, I would say you've got to be willing to fail to succeed. You've got to be willing to get out there and just start trying and get started. I know it can be a little daunting about where to get started, what's the next step. I would recommend for the next step, all listeners here, just pick up a book. I'm not even selling you my book. I'm saying
mm,
anybody's book. Cheap education before expensive education.
mm,
Don't jump up and start signing up for coaching programs and things like that until you at least know the person, you've read the books, go through the cheap information first. That's exactly how you and I met. And so I see a lot of people that don't know much about real estate all of a sudden sign up for some $20,000, $50,000 coaching program. I'm not
mm,
saying that's wrong. I'm just saying spend your hustle before your dollars. Go out and listen to podcasts like this, read books, do the cheap stuff. And then when you're done with all that, then take yourself to the next level. But don't just start swinging around your checkbook to solve problems. I think that's a
mm,
mistake. And so
mm.
that might be my more direct answer. It'd be like, how would somebody get started with no money? And I would say, good. That's the best way to get started is with no money.
Right.
Because people that I find that come in with too much money tend to spend it to solve problems. Writing checks is not really a skill. It's
Mm,
not really a problem solving skill. And I see a lot of businesses ultimately fail because of that comment right there. They come in too well funded and they run into FTX. I'm sorry, too soon. They come in too well funded with too much money, and you have problems like we saw with that. So like FTX,
mm,
again, not point picking on those guys, although they deserve it. It's like if you have too much money, you're going to reach for that to solve things instead of using entrepreneurial skill to solve your problems. And so I would say if you're starting off with little or no money, you're in the absolute right spot. And if you're starting off with
mm.
a whole lot of money, stick it under the mattress and let's pretend like you don't have a whole lot of
Right.
and you can bring your money out in the future. But for now, learn entrepreneurial skills, learn business, use
Right.
creativity over cash. That's what I
And use those books too as a way to even build out your network. The way that I got connected with Bill is I read his book, Creative Cash, finished the whole thing. I had a list of questions that I knew that I wanted to ask and get some clarity on. And then I just reached out and said, Bill, you good for a conversation on this day or this
yeah,
time? We ended
absolutely.
up talking.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'll be happy to give you my contact. Anybody listening here, same thing. Feel free to reach out to me. I like talking real estate. I don't mind answering some questions if you have some things, and I do offer information and education. So reach out to me.
Right.
Maybe I can help
Right.
you out.
Yeah. So where can my listeners and watchers find you online or how can they
Yeah,
get in
absolutely.
contact?
So first off, easy. I'll give you my email address. Simple. Bill at gobroadwell.com. That's BROADWELL.com. Bill at Go Broadwell. The same website, Broadwell Property Group, Go Broadwell. You can see my resume and my professional stuff there.
Mm,
And Facebook. I have a live Facebook group called Real Estate Raw, and we meet
mhm.
every Wednesday at 2 p.m. I do a live session every 2 p.m. So please join us. It's a private group, but request access and we'll let you in. But yeah, there's a lot of good information out there like that, and all free. Like my Facebook group is all free. No sales, no pitching, just straight information. So come in there and learn there before you go to the next level with me or anyone else. That would be
Right.
my advice. But yeah, that's how you can reach out to me.
Awesome. Awesome information today. I think we got a good base on some creative financing
Perfect.
strategies. And then realistically, like we know we need to look at market cycles, understand where we are, where we think we might be going, and then play our cards accordingly. So really appreciate all
Absolutely.
the
Thanks for having me on.
knowledge and the time
Yeah.
and yeah, Bill,
Oh, and the book's on Amazon. I forgot to mention that. The book is on Amazon. Yeah. Creative Cash. It's on Amazon.
and
Get the copy.
go get that on Amazon.
There
Creative
you go.
Cash, awesome book, will open you up to some new opportunities. So from the Financial Freedom Fast podcast, we had Bill Ham today. Thank you, Bill, for your
Hey, I
time.
appreciate it, Matt. Talk to you soon, man.
Talk soon.